All right, folks, welcome back. The last time I filmed working on this piece, it was pretty early stages, and I've done quite a bit of work since then, considering it's finished and I just varnished it. And I realized I didn't really film a lot of that process. So I'll include some screenshots or some stills of a few intermediate stages here. But if you recall, this is a 9x12 panel. It's a cradled panel. It's 2 inches thick. It's nice and beefy. I've taped off the sides, which I'll talk about here in a minute. And this started out, well, it didn't start out, this whole thing is acrylic ink. So let me, there we go, get rid of that glare a little bit. So what I did, I love to work in acrylic ink in my under layers, and often will finish with acrylic paint and potentially some other mark making with oil pastel or other water soluble crayons and things like that at the very end sometimes. With this particular piece, I ended up doing the whole thing in acrylic ink. Now, when you're working on cradled panel, this is wood, right? So a pine panel on a board, and this particular board was pre-primed with gesso. So if you are working with inks or any water-based medium on a board, you want to make sure you prime it first. And gesso is a great way to prime. The other thing that I like to do is I'll put a layer of GAC 100 on the back, especially for bigger pieces. This one's 9x12, so probably not as much of an issue, but sealing the back will also help ensure that it's protected from moisture and it won't warp on you. That can happen sometimes, especially with bigger pieces. Again, this one's small, it's 9x12. GAC 100 is a product that's made by Golden, and essentially what it is the polymer binder that they use with their acrylic paints, just without the pigment. So it's wonderful. You can mix it with pigments and make your own paints. You can also use it to seal, and that's how I primarily use it. So this particular cradled panel, pre-gessoed from the manufacturer, and I just went on top of it with inks. And I love working with inks to get these effects. So in my previous video, you can check that out. I showed how you can put alcohol on top of the inks when they're wet, and it pushes the pigment out, and you get these really cool kind of effects. And if you've got a layer underneath of color, when it pushes the pigment out, you will see the layer underneath. So it's a super fun technique for anybody that works in oil and cold wax, which is another medium I love. There's a process that's very similar where you can take a piece that's got oil and cold wax in it. You take some mineral spirits like Gamsol and you put them in a little thing they call an oiler boiler, and you can spritz it on your surface and it dissolves some of that top layer, and you can scrape it back and see what's underneath. So I really love that technique, and this is a technique that gets you a similar effect with acrylic ink. So super excited. Yeah, this piece took some twists and turns a little bit. This little flower ended up being attached. I liked that better for the composition, kind of gave a little bit of different shading. Love the background. Yeah, so here's where I landed, and super excited about it. I'm calling this piece Rise in Your Light. I've been going through a lot of stuff lately. The world's a bit of a crazy place. And so that message that we all have something to bring to the world, and everything that we have to bring matters, is something that's really resonating with me right now, and a message that I think we could all internalize a little bit more. So yeah, so Rise in Your Light, 9x12. And this is destined for a silent auction to benefit the East Greenbush Community Library. So if you happen to be in upstate New York in the East Greenbush area, on October 18th, they are doing a fundraiser. It's called Night at the Library. It's meant to benefit the library. And they have a bunch of local artists that have donated work as part of the silent auction. And that's where this piece is headed. So I'm super, super excited for this to be part of the group. I'm honored to be amongst the many, many wonderful artists that have contributed work. And it's varnished. I varnished it yesterday. So a lot of people ask me what varnish I like. I use a couple of different types of varnish depending on the situation and the piece. So for pieces like this that are typically a single medium or are all acrylic in one form or another, I really enjoy this satin varnish from Liquitex. It's a brush-on varnish. I do 2 to 3 coats, let it sit 3 hours in between, light coats, and it gives, you can see a little bit of the shine here from the lights, but it gives a bit of, it's a satin finish, so it's not super glossy, but it's glossy enough to bring out the colors, but not so glossy that it distracts from the texture. So when I have a lot of textured in my work, I don't like to use a super glossy varnish because it tends to hit all the high points and you don't really see the painting underneath. So that's what I like to use for these sorts of pieces. For other pieces that either have much more multimedia or are really set up, maybe there's watercolor underneath, I like to use a spray varnish, and I like to use the Acrylic Gallery UV Protect in the satin finish for that. So that's just what I like to do there. So where I am in my process right now, painting is finished. I need to, I've varnished, and now what I need to do is decide what I'm going to do with the sides. I need to sign it, and I've got a little process. I stamped the back. I'm not going to sign the front. I didn't sign the front of this one because it's a panel. I feel comfortable signing the back. You can't really separate the artwork from the surface if it's on a panel. So that's typically what I use my signature for, is to just anchor my copyright in my work. But I'll sign the back on this one. And let's pull the tape off. So let's see if I can do that and not bump my camera too much. So this is just Scotch painter's tape. And I do like to paint the edges, or rather tape the edges, so that I can get a nice clean finish. Now, if you do this and you let your piece sit for a while, I've had that before. I don't often have the luxury of finishing a piece in a single setting. So I often have my pieces sit for a while. And if they're sitting for a while with this tape on, I have found that sometimes they can pull at any loose bits on the panel. So something that you can do is you can heat it. This is a place where the varnish kind of got over and stuck that down. You can heat it a little bit with a blow dryer or a heat tool very gently, just to heat up that adhesive, and it will loosen up that tape for you. That works if you're pulling tape off of watercolor paper as well, by the way. So here we go. The big question for me is, this piece has a fairly dark background, again, kind of reflecting my inner world right now. So the question then is, if the background is dark and I want to call attention to the subject, if you look at it from the side, is that going to call attention to the dark, or is it going to call attention to the light? So that's really the big question here. And I don't hate it, honestly. My options are to just seal it as is and letting the natural color show through. It's got quite a bit of a yellow undertone. I do have raw sienna is one of the colors that I've used in here. That was my yellow that I made my greens with. So it can pull through that. I've also got burnt sienna in here. So the yellow's there. My other alternative is I've got a walnut stain that I could use to stain this with, and then it would be a bit of a darker and maybe a bit of a cooler color. Let me go grab that and I'll be right back. Okay, I've got a couple of different colors of stain that I use for this. I really like General Finishes. This is a water-based stain. They dry really quickly. They work beautifully. This is one that I love. It's called Provincial. The other one I have is Tobacco, which is much darker, and I don't think that would be a good fit for this. So it's a bit warm. And it brings out the natural wood. It can be a very, very light stain. It doesn't have to be super, super dark. And that might be a nice compliment. I really should do a sample swatch so that I could hold this up better. That's a good note to myself for the future. So that could be an option. And then if I do stain it, this is what I use to seal. So I can seal just the wood as is, or I can seal over the top of the stain. So I'm going to need to go process this for a little bit and think about what I want to do. I'll be back. All right, I am back. I have decided that I like it with the darker edge just because the piece is so dark. It really helps this stand out. It's just too light. If it were thinner, then it might not be as much of an issue, but because there's so much here, I do think I want to stain it. So I also was reminded that I have this as a top coat and this is flat. So I think I'll varnish it at the end with this on the sides, just so it's flat and it's not shiny. This is got a satin to it, which I like for frames. So yeah, I'm gonna grab my supplies and I will get to staining this bad boy. My process is super, super simple. I get a shop towel, dip it in, and go. Oh, look at that luscious color. I don't wear gloves, although I probably should. It's this has got a gel-like. I don't know if you can see the viscosity there. It's pretty thick, but it's all water-based. That doesn't mean it's, you know, great for your skin, but you certainly don't want to drink it or ingest it in any way. But let me just stir this up here. It looks much, 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 much darker than it will on the surface. And pardon me if I'm shaking the camera here. I think that looks pretty. I have the world's thinnest stirrer here. I got this huge box of coffee stirrers to stir up paint, oil-based paint with a medium a while ago, and I've got like hundreds of these things, so it's a little puny to get the job done here, but it's okay. All right, let me see. I've got an extra towel off to the side. Let me set this over there. And this is just one of those blue shop towels, and this is what I use. Like, I'll even use what is here. So let me set that off to the side. Now, if you're a woodworker, you might have opinions about how I'm doing this process. So to each their own. Okay, let me see how well I can do this with you all at this camera angle. Now, I could have used a wood conditioner to help this absorb easily. Oh, there's a ding in that wood right there. That's kind of cool. Look at that color though. Isn't that gorgeous? I think that's going to work really nicely. I could have used a wood conditioner, and I do that when I am, my husband makes a lot of my frames. He's a carpenter, and he will make a lot of my frames for me. And so when I am, this would probably go faster with the brush now that I'm doing this. I will condition the wood and go through a much more rigorous process for finishing up the sides of a panel like this, I tend not to be that precious about it, but I'm sure I could be. The other part is I need to drop this off today. So I'm a bit in a time crunch here, as per usual. No matter how much time I am given to work on something, I will always do it right before it's due. So see here, this is why you sand, which I did not do. So there's probably some sort of oil or something in there that is resisting the stain because it's water-based. Yeah, you know what? Let me grab a brush. I think this will go faster with the brush. I'll be right back. Okay, I zoomed out a bit too, so I'm not worried about getting the camera. I'm just using one of these Worcester brushes. Yeah, that's much better. I probably could have taped off the back to keep the back a little more clean. Again, if I were not waiting till the last minute, I saw a video recently where somebody was talking about for people with ADHD, and I have not been diagnosed with ADHD, although my husband will say I am. There are certainly aspects of it that I identify with for sure, and some things that I'm like, oh, maybe not. But regardless, I saw this video, and he was talking about imposter syndrome, for how it hits harder for people with ADHD because you don't work consistently. You kind of have these spurts of creativity and activity, and you can't, or you think you can't, replicate those at will. And so that just feeds the part of you that says you don't know what you're doing and you're not good enough. And I thought that was really interesting. And his point was, it's not about, I'm just going to wipe off the excess here. It's not about, oh, that's making the camera shake, sorry. The important thing is to just embrace the inconsistency and not judge yourself for being inconsistent. So that's the story I'm telling myself, to not beat myself up for procrastinating, and just know that it's part of the process for me. Look at that grain. Oh, even this pine, this inexpensive pine. What is just so beautiful, I think. Trees are magical. Alrighty. So I'm getting most of that off. I just want to wipe off the excess. And get that going. Alrighty. So I will pause the video and finish this up because you don't need to see me repeat this process. I'll be back. Okay, I know I said I was gonna finish, but and then come back, but just, I mean, come on, look at how beautiful that is. I just love that. Anyway, just had to share. Okay, she is stained, and I need to wait 2 hours now for the stain to dry. There's a little bit of schmutzy on the top and on the bottom, but the sides look beautiful, and that's what folks are really going to see. But I think, let me see if I can set this. I don't know if there's a way I can set it up where you can see, but I think it really sets off the light in the piece because it's dark. And so from the side, what jumps out is the light. It's not contrasting with the dark background. And that's what I wanted. So it's not perfect. But nothing is. And there's a statement in that in and of itself. So I'm going to let this sit for 2 hours, and then I'm going to put a poly on the sides and take her and drop her off at the library. And I hope wherever she lands, someone finds the light in their own story and their own journey, and that we all do. Because we all have light to shine in the world, and we all deserve it. So anyway, more to come. Well, the best laid plans, isn't that what they say? I let the stain dry, and I just couldn't stand those light marks that were on the top and the bottom, as much as I like to let go of perfectionism and things like that. And there's a lot to be said for that, certainly in my work, but I didn't like it. It didn't look good. There was that big mark on the top that if someone had this piece hanging on their wall lower, they would see, and that just didn't feel good to me. So I tried to sand it and stain it again to see if there was some sort of oil or varnish or something that had gotten on there when they made the panel, and I couldn't sand it down enough to get the stain to penetrate. So I don't have time to mess with it. I just went and I painted it black. And I have to say, y'all, I kind of love it. So my go-to is black gesso. It's still a little bit wet. I love black gesso for 2 reasons. One, it seals it. And the second is it's matte. And so it's just sort of this it doesn't take away from the painting. It just sort of absorbs the light and fades into the background. And the only reason why I didn't do it in black to begin with was because the profile of this panel is so big. I thought on a wall it might be a little too much, but I'm kind of digging it. I think it lends itself to the moodiness of the piece. It helps the light parts pop. It's clean from all sides, which I think looks very professional, and I want my piece to be shown in its best light. So that's where I am with it. I do need to put the wire on it. It just occurred to me I still need to do that. So I still need to wire it so it can be hung, but that's where we landed. And yeah, I feel really good about it. I'm glad I went that route. And sometimes we just got to listen to the work. The work will tell us what it needs if we just get out of the way and don't force it. So there we go. That's where we are.